Communications and Digital Technologies Minister Mondli Gungubele is calling for calm. This as he deals with the South African Post Office. The struggling entity was placed under provisional liquidation this month after a creditor approached the Pretoria High Court to recover outstanding rent.
Well, that's not the only issue he is dealing with. There are also allegations that government is trying to block the operation of a satellite internet service company, Starlink, which is owned by Elon Musk. Well, the minister joins us this morning just to shed light on some of these situations that have been developing. Minister Gungubele, always a pleasure speaking to you. A very good morning to you. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening at the South African Post Office. You know, it is an absolute travesty when you see that this could be placed under, or this is being placed under provisional liquidation in itself. But the financial wars when it comes to SAPO, the South African Post Office, date back years on end. And I wonder why is it that we're struggling, really literally struggling to fix some of the issues. You are new at the helm of this department, but your observations so far and some of the diagnoses that have been placed at your desk, what's the problem here?
Thank you. Good morning, Morena. Good morning, Faith, and good morning to your viewership. Thanks very much for the opportunity. I don't think this is the right way to start your new job, but that's what it is. Listen, we are dealing with a situation where the interest of no less than 700 SMEs and the payment that benefits no less than 6.9 million beneficiaries, and then also the interest of a significant number of creditors are actually being in not an exciting situation. So what are we doing? As you have already said, that we are under provisional liquidation, which will be provisional roughly, I guess, up until June, depending on the options we're going to take as government. As we're sitting here, we are spending sleepless nights day in and out because we know the impact of the collapse of the post office, especially to the historical disadvantage in as far as affordable access of email information and so on. And also the importance of making sure that we are a credible debtor in as far as our creditors are concerned, and also ensuring that the payment of the beneficiaries who are highly dependent on that is actually kept afloat. So a lot of options are being explored with regard to what direction are we going to take. But all the options that are being explored, the ultimate objective is to save SAPO. The ultimate objective is to be able to pay creditors. Ultimate objective is to sustain services of ensuring that we are a healthy channel for the payment of the benefit of the grants of no less than 6.9 beneficiaries.
Minister, we've seen what's happened with Transnet, Eskom, Denel. You know, we've seen what's happened with SAA. So can SAPO be saved?
Listen, Morena, I will be a prophet if I'm claiming to do that. We want SAPO to be saved. We think SAPO should be saved. We are analyzing now the total situation and check what options. All I can say, we'll do our best to ensure that it is saved. But for us to say how it will be saved, we must be convinced about we must be informed by the total information that comes out of our total exploration.
Oh.
Yeah. You know, Minister, it was Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana that was in January tabling the regulatory framework that is being developed to use actually the post office as a vehicle for the proposed state bank. In fact, saying that he announced that the company would be receiving 2.4 billion rand from the National Treasury this year to implement a turnaround plan. And now we're sitting under provisional liquidation. We're looking at this as being a framework for a proposed state bank. If we can't get our ducks in a row when it comes to us just offering services of the post, how much more are we going to then fail if we just use this as a similar vehicle for this proposed state bank? Is there a concern right now to say perhaps we were too, optimistic about the problems that lie within the South African Post Office. If this is going to be used as a framework for a state bank, then the state bank won't succeed. We don't want a situation where we have a state bank under provisional liquidation. So that means that we need to clean up the post office first before we even think about a state bank. But is there that concern that, how are we going to use this as a benchmark if the benchmark in itself is failing at this moment in time?
Thank you, Faith. Maybe you will remember, Faith, that at some stage there was a policy intervention to separate the post bank from the post office to make sure that, knowing the sensitivities that a bank work under, the Prudential Authority, the policies and the imperative of the Prudential Authority, when are you allowed to do business as a bank in terms of liquidity and so on, so that you, at all material times, you either whenever the bank clients want their money back, they must be able to find it. South Africa is very strict in that. One of the leading countries as far as the financial system in that regard is concerned. It is against that background government separated the post bank. But I know that's not the point you are raising. You are saying it is crucial to make sure that the post office is viable, so that when we say we want it to work as a bank in a particular way, it serves the purpose. But the key thing to me, Faith, is that historically and by convention, state-owned institutions, whenever they are established, it is supposed to be an extra capacity to the state. They are supposed to be self-supportive. They are supposed to actually achieve the purpose for which they are established. Where the post office is now, it is not serving that purpose. So what am I trying to say? I share your concerns. That's why we are spending sleepless nights, exploring all the options based on the information that is at our disposal to actually address the anxiety that you have put across.
Minister, you know the saying, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But SAPO is broken, and yet the board has not been fixed. The board is still there. They've been renewed. They are continuing their operations. What was the thinking behind keeping that board there?
We're in a process, Morena, of putting a new board. But when you put a new board, you don't dissolve the existing one, because its accounting services its accounting authority, because it's an accounting authority of the institution. There are certain governance imperatives that cannot take place if that board is not in place. So whilst this board, whilst we are appointing a new board, we have an interim board as a transitional mechanism. So very soon we'll be appointing a new board.
How soon, Minister? If the board in itself has gotten to the point where, because under the board's watch, we find ourselves in provisional liquidation, that means that there was clearly something that the board was not doing, whether it's oversight, whether it's ensuring that due diligence was done, whether it's around holding people to account that are supposed to be deployed to ensure that the post office works. They did not do that. Right now, we're in the process of finding out a new board. But in that moment that we're finding out a new board or finding a new board, this board, the one that actually failed in its mandate, is still continuing. So what are we looking at here? A process of months, years, 6 months, 2 months? Where are we at?
My biggest prayer, Faith, this should not be more than 3 months. That's my biggest prayer. Having said that, I want to reassure the public that if there are people who should account with regard to the situation where we are, whether it's the board, whether it's executive management, whether it's the department, being this ministry, we will leave no stone unturned. But the immediate thing now we're confronted with is to do everything to keep the post office afloat.
Minister, you've walked into this department and you are a firefighter. One of the other issues that you're now being faced with is Starlink. Is the government really trying to block the operation of Starlink?
Yes, I got confronted, Morena, with this question when I was at the SAPC. The process of license or anything in that regard is not the job of the department, it's ICASA. So if there are issues with regard to whether Starlink is allowed to operate or not, it's always appropriate to actually ask eCasa because they operate independently in as far as that aspect is concerned.
So in that case, if they operate independently, do you have any word regarding whether or not this is going to move forward or whether or not it won't? In terms of your jurisdiction and just from an oversight role, would you know that, okay, Starlink is going ahead for the supply, of course, because it was all about here connectivity. Starlink is going ahead. Minister, we are briefing you as eCasa that Starlink is going ahead, and this is the implication of such. What do you know so far by that?
Thanks, Faith. I think you're correct. As oversight, we're supposed to be convinced that all the applications that are put before eCasa are being serviced without expressing a view of what should be the outcome of that service. I agree with you. It's important for us to find out, and I'm in a process of doing so.
Minister, thank you so much for joining us. We can only but hope that you manage to get a hold on everything that it is you are faced with, especially SAPO particularly, because it is a state-owned entity that, we can only but hope that at least one of our state-owned entities, we are not here talking about them, being in, as the cool kids would say, being in the mud. So we can only but hope that you manage to fix everything that is before you. But thank you so much for joining us here on the South African Morning. Communications and Digital Minister Mondli Gungubele, of course, just joining us to talk about SAPO and just towards the tail end, what's happening with Starlink.